We're facing a once-in-a-generation economic crisis for the second time in a generation. It's clear we have to build back better. We'll need to help make the economy more equitable and built on a foundation of just and new opportunities by removing the old barriers, the ones that have kept people of color and other communities from being able to fully participate. It's a tall order. To meet it, we'll have to work across barriers and borders, rely on our friends, and reach out even further. That's what a North American recovery is all about. Canada and the U.S. both understand this at the highest of levels. And that's why Prime Minister Trudeau and President Biden recently announced an official roadmap for a renewed U.S.-Canada partnership. It centers on joint efforts to address climate change, advances in global health security, bolsters cooperation on security and defense, and reaffirms our shared commitment to diversity, equity, and justice. Canada and the U.S. are already the closest of partners. You can see it in our economies, our supply chains, and people being so closely linked. We see it in Canada sharing and supplying the raw materials to manufacture PPE. We see it in the U.S. sharing some of its vaccine supply with both Canada and Mexico to kickstart our shared prosperity. That's an acknowledgement of how much we already rely on each other. A relationship as close as the North American one has a lot of layers, and it goes beyond country-to-country relations to include state and province relations, cities exhibiting international leadership, and non-governmental organizations like Maple to help capitalize on the strengths that are already out there, to link people to do business, find solutions, build opportunity, and build back better. We're also doing the work here at the Consulate General as well through our Trade Commissioner Service, whether it's reaching into new communities to tap into the strength of our diversity in Canada and California, or creating accelerators to assist Canadian companies that are poised to bring value to Southern California's most vital sectors, including tech, clean tech, biotech, media, and entertainment. This is a moment of real opportunity to create the economy we want, an economy that works for everyone, that makes Canada and the U.S. stronger together. This is a moment for governments to work with businesses, to work with cross-border community builders like Maple to help the potential of our countries. It's all hands on deck, and we know the only way forward is together.
If a company's not considering Canada as a key market, they're really missing the boat. Because we're landlocked with Canada, it's very easy to get product into Canada. The governments cooperate quite nicely, so the customs clearance process, once you have it down, is really simple, and so it's really a natural place for companies to launch their international business. There's a good portion of the Canadians that live in urban markets, but there's also a good portion that live in the suburbs and the rural markets as well. So understanding that dynamic, understanding that the average level of household income for Canadians is higher than it is in the U.S., and that Canadians shop more online than citizens in the U.S. Because in some cases they're not near to their mall, so they will purchase online and are willing to accept longer transits because they know that in some cases they live in a very remote area.
Toronto has really grown into a world-class technology hub, and by all accounts, the technology labor pool in Toronto, specifically in Toronto, is tremendous, and we're seeing the comparisons to the Silicon Valley in terms of the depth of talent and capability. Because Canada has a very robust freelance market, you find a lot of really good talent, and we've based our model, our employee model, basically is a hybrid of both permanent employees and freelance employees. And what we found is that it's very easy for us to maintain that kind of a model in Canada, but much more difficult to do that here in the U.S. And we believe the main driver of that is obviously the healthcare and the benefits in the U.S. are very costly and are one of the key reasons that people tend to want to have an employer, where in Canada it's different.
markets are markets. So whether you're in Canada, whether you're in the U.S., whether you're in California, whether you're in Connecticut, I mean, there are market factors that influence your business. And I think the key is to understand in advance the impacts of your market, just in terms of the real estate availability, labor availability, all of those other things that go on with planning. So there's a lot of factors that you have to consider when you're making the move from one country to another. And that's part of what we've done as a company is we've said, look, we need to be a global company because our clients aren't just based in Canada, aren't just based in the US, aren't just based in Seoul, Korea. We've got companies that we work with across the globe.
What's unique about the Canadian capital markets is that we are the only regulated public venture capital market in the world with a two-tiered market system. We have the TSX Venture Exchange for early-stage growth companies and Toronto Stock Exchange for later-stage developed companies. What may be surprising to learn is that on the TSX Venture Exchange, companies can list that are actually pre-revenue, and our average financing on the venture market is around $5 million. So for U.S. companies that are looking to raise beyond their Series A, TSX Venture Exchange provides a really unique platform for growth capital for a company to execute on its business plan. What's also unique about the Canadian capital markets is that we provide a platform for long-term growth. For U.S. companies, there is a clear path to list on TSX Venture Exchange, do several rounds of growth capital funding, graduate to Toronto Stock Exchange, and when the company is big enough and relevant enough, we have a streamlined path to be able to dual list onto a U.S. market.
Canadian companies are massively more exposed to the currency pair of USD CAD. Their exposures to dollars are extreme. It's not just the purchase of products and services from the United States, but also from the Far East, which is denominated in the US dollar. So our Canadian clients are very, very sensitive to dollar strength. It makes their products and their services way more expensive. It's difficult to quantify the value of a trading strategy. But if you look at companies that just rely on the spot market, in February of this year, a Canadian company would have been buying their US dollars at the 131, 132 level. In March of this year, they would have been buying their US dollars at 146. So we're talking a 10% swing. So every 100,000 US dollars is going to cost them 10,000 US dollars more. So there's real benefit to having a strategy in place. You won't always outperform the market, but at least you have certainty.
So at RSM, we define the middle market as really the heart and the beating soul of the economy. The middle market comprises of 40% of the US GDP and comprises of over 200,000 companies. We also are the only ones that have partnered with the US Chamber of Commerce to develop what's called an MMBI index, and that's the middle market business index, in which we're aggregating information from the middle market, asking CEOs real critical questions to help us evaluate and get a sense of what's going on within the middle market.
I think the most important thing is to engage IP counsel early on, because many companies get some counsel and they think they know enough, at least to guide them through this very busy period where they're dealing with all the other issues, and they think IP is just one of those issues, and they'll slap something together and say, okay, I've dealt with that at least enough so I can put it on pause. But you can't really ever put it on pause, because as you develop and as your competitors take actions, you have to be able to change the strategy and develop the strategy as you go along.
Canadians living in the U.S. may want to avoid purchase of U.S. mutual funds. Should they choose to move back to Canada, they will be forced to liquidate the U.S. mutual funds upon returning to Canada. This could trigger capital gains. If they were, however, holding securities, U.S. securities or Canadian securities, these securities can be moved in kind. It's best for individuals who are planning a move between Canada and the U.S. to consult with a qualified cross-border financial advisor to get the best advice and to avoid costly mistakes.
Before moving, it's always nice to start planning. The earlier the better. I would say a minimum of 6 months would be ideal, just so that we can work with your other professionals that may be involved, such as immigration attorneys or your financial advisors, so that if, for instance, you need to get rid of some of those mutual funds, we can do that without affecting those other realms. We really can't underestimate all that's involved with a cross-border move. And we really like to help our clients in a holistic manner. In essence, we like to think ourselves as the compass, helping them navigate their way.
If you're relocating from, one country to another, you're going to be coming with the same practices and thoughts and, ways of looking things as you did coming from Canada. And you're in a whole new boat. It's even if you're doing the same kind of business. So when there's a transition, that's another time because you need new ways of thinking and acting in those times. So Unstoppable Conversations is a management consulting firm, and we specialize in leadership transformation and cultural transformation. And in particular, our work is involved in a brand new category of consulting called intentional business discontinuity.
In terms of a typical client problem we would see, it would be, for instance, a Canadian company that's servicing the U.S. market. And they are sending people there on a repeated basis or even moving employees there and not understanding what the work authorizations are that are required. The crazy thing is, in a scenario like that, there are very easy U.S. work visas available if the proper planning is done. And if it's not, and someone's doing it as a business visitor without authorization, they could possibly be barred and the company can be red flagged. So proactive planning is really the key.
So I have a client in the Bay Area that has a large number of business travelers that come into Canada. And about 10 years ago, they approached us to try to set up a plan in terms of ensuring as much compliance as they could that would suit their risk tolerance level. So we worked with them for a number of years to come up with the best plan on a go-forward basis, and they actually got to a situation where they're almost 100% compliant for all of those individuals now. So it worked out quite well for them given the level of exposure that they would have had they not been compliant.
One of the services that we offer with our partnership through Centennial College in Toronto is an online cybersecurity training that looks at different regulations, not only from a Canadian but a US and also EU perspective, and also addresses the different requirements for different sectors as well, because different sectors do have specific cybersecurity and privacy requirements.
One of the key growth opportunities is geographic expansion. So quite often, almost every company thinks about how can they enlarge their footprint. And the US is obviously one of the primary areas that they think about. Number one, because they speak English. And number two, because our cultures between Canada and the US appears to be very similar. Aha moments happen at all points during the relationship that we have with the CEO. And there's some people it's as unique as every individual is. So I'd love to tell you it all happens at one time. I can't. It happens at various times during our relationship. But once it does, it's one of the most amazing things for an advisor to feel. It's almost like a mother does when they see their son or daughter succeed in life.
Any opportunity where there's a chance to combine the Air Canada brand with a Canadian brand makes sense for us, to activate our brands together, to put our energies together, to come together to help each other succeed. And by doing so, we connect people to their home. It's much more than an airline. It's a relationship.
Hello, bonjour. I'm Khawar Nasim, Canada's Acting Consul General in New York. I'm speaking to you today from our nearly empty offices here in Manhattan. It feels very surreal. Challenges of the last year have certainly changed our landscape. There is no doubt that this has been a year like no other, and I sincerely hope that first and foremost, you are all doing well and taking care to protect yourselves. You know, I've always been told that I am a glasses half full kind of guy, and I'd like to share with you some of the good news from the past year. You know, despite the border restrictions, nearly 95% of commercial goods continue to flow between Canada and the US, putting food on our tables and protecting jobs on both sides. The new NAFTA is the gold standard of free trade agreements, and it will ensure that North American trade remains free and fair. And I want to share with you a little anecdote which I think represents the friendship and the true partnership between our two countries. Every day, thousands of healthcare workers from Canada cross the border into New York, into Washington State, into Michigan to work in U.S. hospitals, a testament to our friendship. You know, throughout the pandemic, our Trade Commissioner Service, which has offices in New York, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia, has been running virtual boot camps and accelerators for emerging Canadian startups in areas like AI and clean tech and life sciences. We're bringing Canadian innovation, Canadian solutions to a U.S. marketplace. You know, they say that when you find out who your friends are when times are tough, these times have been tough. And I'm enormously proud of the cooperation we have with the United States and with our great friends at the Maple Business Council. I know that we're going to get through this, but not only that, we're going to get through this and we're going to be better and we're going to build back better. So let's get going. Keep well, my friends.